All right, here we go. It's always so weird talking into the void here with nobody looking back at me. But good afternoon. I'm Justin Haugen. I'm my Tamron ambassador. Got to show the Tamron logo. Thanks for joining me today. I had a lot of fun putting this class together because I wanted to approach it from the angle of what would I want to go back and tell myself if I was photographing my very first wedding, which I did maybe in 2005 or six. My wedding journey started as kind of an afterthought. I had a friend who came up to me and said, "Hey, would you take $500 to photograph my wedding?" And who wouldn't take that job when you're 25 years old? So I said, "Sure, let's do it." And I didn't know what I didn't know, and actually it went pretty successfully in terms of my friend being happy. But now, looking back on it, I didn't know what I was doing. And if I could just go back in time and have a conversation with Justin at 25 and tell him what he was about to embark upon, it would have blown my mind the information that I have now after doing it for all these years. So I'm very excited to share with you some of this information. And hopefully, if you're about to shoot your first wedding, or maybe you're very early in your photography journey, this will help give you some insight into what you need to do to prepare. So starting there, I'm Justin Haugen. By the way, I didn't introduce myself. Thanks for joining us here today. I'm from South Korea. I've been in Arizona for 23 years. I've been doing photography for 20 years, professionally in some capacity, and I've been doing it full time for the last 11 years. I used to work with actually a current client, former employer, and they laid me off in 2013. And out of fear and confusion, I started my wedding photography business because it was the only skill that I really had, and re-entering the workforce wasn't an option. So if you're ever trying to get that little push or nudge towards starting a new adventure in your life, fear is the greatest motivator. So if you're afraid, you can photograph weddings. I think that's the number one quality of a wedding photographer is somebody who lives in constant fear, because I fear for not being able to provide for my family. So that's why I did weddings. Um, I'm actually a reformed wedding photographer. I left the industry last year. I shot my very last wedding. I know I'm going to get dragged back into it because somebody's going to be out there who wants to have me photograph their wedding. Like, I got to do it for my friends. It's going to happen. But as of right now, Monday through Friday is my work hours, and now I don't do any weddings on the weekends. I want to be at home because I started a family a couple of years ago. I've got a beautiful wife and a lovely about to be 2 year old daughter at home, and I'd rather spend my time now on the weekends where it counts. So my time is taking me towards more business to business work. I do a lot of work with defense contractor industries. I'm photographing missiles of all things, and I'm also photographing one of my clients is an exploration mining company. So I photograph geologists looking at rocks in the mountains of Nevada and the forests of Oregon was what I was doing last week. So interesting turn of work. You never know where weddings will take you, though. Weddings have a way of bringing you around all sorts of people who do different kinds of work or involved in different kinds of organizations. So it's weddings, I feel like, are the number one skill set. If you can work weddings, you can photograph anything in this industry. And I've learned that myself. Like the challenges that weddings present to you, and the types of shooting conditions that you're in, nothing is more stressful than what I shoot on wedding days. So I've done all kinds of different photo shoots. I've had every size of client, and I always come back to weddings as the single most challenging thing that you can photograph. That just you really cut your teeth on weddings, and if you can shoot a wedding, you can shoot anything. So let's get on with our class here. Got a question already. Oh, I think I kind of answered that already. The question was, can you please tell us about the military work you do? Uh, what from that can you translate for those doing weddings? And military work is the defense contractor company that I work with. Um, the work I'm doing with them, I'm literally photographing marketing type campaign stuff that might be for recruitment or to highlight a product. Um, I also photograph their corporate events. I photograph their company portraits, and so I think for those doing weddings, I don't know how I translate that to weddings. I translate weddings back to the work that I'm doing now. So this was more of a transition for me. I didn't come from that space into weddings. I started in weddings and I've been in this space for 15 years. So now, now my work is more business to business. But yeah, I think weddings though are what translate into other types of photography. So I want to start this thinking about the big picture. Like I don't want to give you necessarily the roadmap of your client intake process as far as like how you're going to go and get clients. I don't want to. I'm not there yet. Let's say this is from the perspective of you just booked your first wedding, and now or you're about to have your consultation that leads to your first wedding. That's where I want to start with you, and I want to end with you until you finish photographing your wedding and you get home, and now you're going to get those photos on your computer, and that's where I leave you off because I can't. We could spend a week here talking about the entire nuances of a wedding, but like I want to approach this from the perspective of booking, going to meeting to book first wedding and shooting that wedding. So let's say you got an inquiry, somebody got you a referral, and you're going to meet with this couple for the first time. And where are you going to meet them at, and how are you going to conduct this meeting? Pre-Zoom era, which now all my meetings seem to happen on Zoom. My favorite place to meet clients was initially in my career, it was Starbucks. Don't go to Starbucks. I don't recommend anyone meeting clients in a Starbucks. Everyone would meet at Starbucks at the time. I think that was like the hot spot for every wedding photographer. If you're going to meet with people and you want to show a little more extra effort that reflects back on you, be a little more mindful about what you're selecting for where you want to meet people. I got a great recommendation from a friend to book your meetings at hotel lobbies. Find a nice hotel lobby, find a nice resort. You're always welcome to go in there. You can find a nice bar or you can find an area that serves coffee. And that's the best place to meet couples because it shows a little more thought into your meeting place. If you met in Starbucks, everybody meets in Starbucks. So why do you want to do what everyone else does? But now probably everyone's meeting in hotel lobbies. But that's, I think, a better way to leave a first impression. So that's my first step. We're going to meet in a nice hotel lobby. And this is where you get to learn a little bit about the couple. You're going to need to know like what their proclivities are, how their comfort level in these social settings. You're going to learn about whether or not they're comfortable with the idea of a wedding. I've had couples who hate the idea of a wedding. They don't like sharing PDA in front of the camera, let alone groups of people. Then you have people who are all about this experience. They're thriving on the opportunity to see all their friends and family, have them all in one place. So you're gonna have to decipher these things based on the things they tell you at this consultation. I like to, if you're with a couple that imbibes, and yeah, buy them a drink. It's a minimal investment into what could be a fruitful and lasting relationship that could lead to other referrals as you go down the line. So you can start with a drink or start with some coffee, but always offer to buy or just pick up the tab right off the bat. When you get to your consultation with the couple, we're going to have to set our expectations. We're going to have to build trust with them, and we're going to have to understand who they are as couples. Also, this is where you establish your communication. You should always be very responsive to couples. I like when people send me an email for a wedding consultation when they're asking me questions. My initial contact, I like to be responsive as quickly as possible. If I can get to them within the first like 10 minutes of an email, boom, perfect. You might leave the best, strongest impression because you responded first. The sooner the better. I try not to let things lapse into the next day. But sometimes weekends happen and then you don't even get a chance to respond to them, and maybe you've lost that gig. I've had couples who emailed me and I got to them within an hour, and literally I didn't hear anything back within a day. The next day they told me they booked somebody else. Like, well, I don't understand how that works, but I like to, as a connoisseur of photography, I would think I would like to test drive a lot of different experiences with people, but some people just want to get straight to the booking and feel like they've got that portion of their wedding planning taken care of. And as a recently wedded man, I understand a little bit more of this perspective now that I've been on that side of the camera as well. All right. So when you meet for your consultation, this is your chance to learn about what they want to do with this wedding. It's a critical first step for me because I want to understand their vision. I want to discuss my approach because I have a particular wedding photography approach, and everybody else has a different way of doing things. So they're gonna know like how close I like to get on wedding day and how involved the camera is in the action. They're going to know what I'm doing with flash photography and how that impacts the look of their wedding photos. They're going to learn how I run family formals and how I take control of that part of the wedding after the ceremony. They're going to understand what my expectations are for the timeline and how I expect to push through the schedule in the day. They're going to learn my deliverables and then when they can reach me, the communication terms and their payment terms. I like to ask a lot of detailed questions. I like to know what their dreams are for the wedding and their priorities are for the wedding day. How big, how small, who's there, who are the key players, what does this wedding mean to them? I also want to understand their personal style. Like I had a couple, and you'll see their photos in here. They were into Lord of the Rings, and that heavily showed up in their wedding day when they had a Lord of the Ring. They had a Hobbit home from the Shire cake, wedding cake. So like you're gonna learn everybody's like, are they nerds? Are they jocks? Like what are they? And this is your chance to relate to people. I think I booked that wedding because I know a little bit about the Lord of the Rings. I've watched the movies. I've read the books in high school. This is your chance to build rapport. I'm also learning. I'm also learning about the couple in terms of like their individual preferences. Sometimes you're just gonna. It's like a real case study in human psychology because you're gonna meet every type of personality. You're gonna meet more uptight personalities, more outgoing personalities. You're going to meet people who are very intellectual, people who are not so intellectual. So you really don't know who you're going to get and when you're going to meet them. So you have to be prepared to just be open to like be malleable, be a chameleon, learn how to weave your way in and around those conversations and build rapport. If I notice the groom is paying attention to a basketball score on the TV playing at the hotel lobby bar, like maybe that's an opening for a conversation. If they're wearing a certain type of sports memorabilia, like a hat or a jersey, who knows how people show up to consultations. But I pay attention to those things because that might be a way for me to broach a common interest. And maybe it's not the bride who needs to be sold on. Maybe the bride is already sold on my photography, but it's the groom who needs to be sold. So maybe sometimes I felt like, oh, I'm not trying to win the bride right now. I'm trying to win the groom. Maybe the groom doesn't even like the idea of this photography experience. I'm the last thing they really care to deal with. Usually those people don't even show up to the consultation. It's just the bride. However, if I notice very tense body language or terse responses, I understand that maybe I need to approach this in terms of like my speed and efficiency and my level of like trying to make a comfortable space for couples and that we push through to the best part of the day for them when they're having a good time with their guests. So it's really important for me to communicate that, to learn that and communicate in a way that makes people feel comfortable with what they expect the wedding to be like. Um, I want them to be excited about the images. I want them to see themselves in the photos, and I want them to see themselves in this photographic process. Sorry, I've got an earbud that's like falling out of my ear right now, so I hope I'm not giving too much microphone feedback. 1 second here. Yeah, so I need them to see themselves in these photos. I need to see them, and usually I do this by like seeing my photography, but we'll talk about the wedding day. Like I like to be very thorough and set a wedding schedule, and I do want to show you all what that looks like, so you understand what the schedule looks like to me and how the day kind of forms around the schedule. Because if you have a solid schedule, it's going to help inform your shot list and what you're photographing in the day. So be sure to make a schedule. Don't ever go into a wedding without a schedule. I did it for so long. I didn't have a schedule. I've shot, dozens of weddings where I just went in and freewheeled it. Like I don't know what I was thinking. Like I thought I could go to the wedding and just figure it out. And I did for a while and I never got called out on it. So a lot of the things I'm informing you on are things that like I made a lot of mistakes. I've had gear fail on me. I didn't have backups. I've had schedules run behind. I've been responsible for things not going right on the wedding day. you have to be prepared to fail a little bit. And the best lessons come in failure. Everything that do now in wedding days, I'm never stressed on wedding days anymore because I've seen it all. I've had it all go wrong. And you're going to experience that too, but you're going to be a little more prepared because you watch this presentation and you'll have a better idea of like how to structure your day. But yeah, talk about your approach. Are you light and airy? Are you more dramatic? Is your work heavily flash driven? Talk about those things. Are you more of a fly on the wall and you're with like a super telephoto lens from back in the corner of the ceremony and you're not anywhere near the action? Or are you that really close photojournalistic photographer who has the camera like underneath like the bride and groom as they kiss and getting a shot looking up at them? Like there's all kinds of different ways to approach this. The reason why I need people to know my approach is because I have to set expectations and I want them to feel comfortable with how I do things, and there are no surprises come wedding day. Like if they notice that I'm like 2 feet from their faces while they're doing a kiss, they shouldn't be surprised because they knew I was going to do that. I told them about that. Check and see if there's any questions here. No questions. Okay. But we should talk about, this is your chance to talk about your timeline, talk about your photo delivery process, set this all up front so we're on the same page when it comes to planning on the wedding day. And I'd like to show you all my wedding schedule here. I hope I can do this without losing the screen. Let's see. And if Akiva from Adorama could tell me in the notes if he sees my wedding schedule on the screen or if he sees my presentation still. All right, I'm zooming in. Thank you, Akiva. Okay, so this is what I go through with clients before every wedding, and some form of this would look good. You can personalize it better. I'm just a meat and potatoes guy. I don't have a lot of flair. I'm sure there are people out there who put their own spin on this, and it looks way better than what I've done. I got my logo up there. I have the name and the bride and groom, the venue, and their wedding date. And key information over here, I would put phone numbers in for everybody that's important to the wedding. If I have a second shooter, their numbers in here too. If the bride and groom want to add to this and add any other vendors in there that they think it's important for me to know, this is a good place to do that. I also have a little note about keeping things tidy in the wedding prep areas because things get messy. And even though I send this disclaimer, it's always messy anyways. I like to make sure that I know who all the key members of family are. So mother of the bride, father of the bride, any siblings, if the siblings have a spouse too, if they want to include the children's names too, if they have children, that's fine. Best man, groomsmen, maid of honor, bridesmaids, like have all that information. I like it. I try to remember names on the wedding day. It's hard, but if you've got this to refer to, then sometimes it looks good on you when you call people by their first name because it shows you put the extra effort in to know these people's names. And then from there, this is like a phone call, maybe a month before the wedding, and I get on the phone with the couple, and we talk about the ceremony start time, which I should already know. And I usually tend to work backwards because I'm trying to figure out like where are you? When is hair and makeup showing? When do I want to start photography? So anytime there's a start time around like 4:30, I'm probably going to start ceremonies at 5. I usually start with like a 4-hour window because that gives me time to photograph the guys getting ready, portraits of them, the bridesmaid getting ready, the bride and hair and makeup, and then also giving the hair and makeup some time to get done because I usually show up. I start photographing the bride getting ready, and it's never like a in your face type photo because nobody's got a full face on yet. Nobody wants to be photographed with half a face of makeup. Their hair is not done. So this is really just a get used to my presence being in the room kind of thing. I'm going to show up. I'm going to start photographing some details. I'm going to photograph the ring. I'm going to photograph the dress, the shoes, and then I'm getting more environmental shots. I'm getting not in your face photos, but maybe there's some drinks going on. There's some laughter happening. I want to capture that kind of mood. I don't necessarily want to stick an 85 millimeter or a 35 millimeter lens in somebody's face and their makeup's not done. So this is just getting the room comfortable that Justin's here now. Because when I walk in the room, I can feel the air leave the room a little bit because now it's like, oh, we're not hanging out anymore. We're being photographed. So this is a good time to just establish your presence and get people used to the camera. Then I jump over to the guys. The guys get some photography. They get dressed, group photos, one-on-one photos. If there's any key family members around, like a mom or a dad or a brother, they're involved in these pictures as well. And I like to get some portraits of the groom. And by this time, I bounce back to, it's been about an hour. I bounce back to the bridesmaids room, and hair and makeup should all be done. I like to set a firm, this is when hair and makeup needs to be done time. I tell brides that they need to tell their hair and makeup stylist that this is the cutoff time, because I lost count of how many weddings I've done where hair and makeup ran long, and then I got blamed for it when the priest like yelled at me. I've had a priest yell at me, so we're going to talk about some disaster scenarios too. I had a priest upset because he thought I kept the bride from being on time to the wedding. So hair and makeup is oftentimes why brides are late to weddings. So don't tell any hair and makeup artists you know that I said that. Um, let's see. And then after this, sometimes you got a first look. This wedding in particular started with family photos before the ceremony, but usually when I'm done with the bride and groom with their portraits and all these getting ready photos, it's usually time to start the ceremony. Ceremonies typically last 30 minutes. Maybe they could go as long as an hour. I've done some Orthodox weddings where it was like an hour and a half ceremony, so you just never know. But that's all stuff you would have established before you book the wedding. And then after the ceremony is over, I usually go into family formals, and I'm gonna do a full wedding day, kind of like how I'm storytelling, how I'm lighting, what I'm encountering, and we're gonna look at photos slide by slide, and I'll talk through how I photograph family portraits, how I photograph big wedding party pictures, and then how I move into bride and groom portraits, and then we slide into the reception and dinner and finish out the night. So we're gonna go through what a wedding day looks like, kind of picture by picture here. But here is my template for what I do with wedding schedules. So you should try to come up with some kind of wedding schedule yourself too, because it will make you look more professional. If anything, have this ready to go on your consultations and just kind of talk people like, hey, here's what a wedding day usually looks like. I think that's where a lot of couples are reassured when they work with me, is because they know that I am leading them. They don't, most couples don't know what to expect on wedding day. So I'm going to tell them what to expect on wedding day. And what that does is it makes you the expert on what a wedding looks like. And you could be one of the first vendors they're dealing with. And this might help inform how they plan their next vendor meetings, and how it structures their conversations with those people. So you tell them this is what a wedding day looks like. That might help them, and it'll help you, because I like being the first person to tell them what a schedule looks like, because it informs the time we spend together. I love wedding planners. Wedding planners are great, especially when they're photo minded, but sometimes their objectives are different than my objectives. My objective is to get as much time with the bride and groom to get as many possible photo opportunities as possible. But a wedding planner's schedule might be more minded around like getting, helping out catering, making sure things are served on time, and that certain vendors are setting certain things up on time. And they may not be as photo minded as the next wedding planner, but so wedding planners are great. But if you can be the first person to influence the schedule, be that person. Okay. I hope I haven't lost anybody yet. So now I want to get into the part that I love to talk about, gear. I love gear. Everybody loves gear. So we want to talk about camera bodies, lenses, and lighting. Those are your three critical pieces on the wedding day. I mean, there's plenty of other stuff that supports your wedding, your gear, like bags. I'll touch on that briefly, but camera bodies. Here's the deal. I've been doing this for 20 years, 15 years in weddings. I could go back 10 years ago and use a camera from 10 years ago and still produce great results. I feel like we entered a golden era of cameras in about 2014, 2013, when we hit the 5D Mark III, the D750. Those camera bodies were the primary, Nikon bodies. We had Nikon and Canon bodies. We had D800s. The 5D Mark II was still a thing around 2010 to 2013. The thing about these cameras is their image quality, their ability to produce results, that never diminished over time. What has improved in camera bodies moving forward has been certain things like ergonomics, whether they're DSLRs or mirrorless. Cameras have faster and more accurate autofocus systems. Uh, Things really haven't changed a lot though in terms of the image quality produced. We had high megapixel bodies 10 years ago. We had high ISO performance um, cameras. So all of that stuff existed 10 years ago. I can go back in time. I can grab any camera in the last 10 years and make good images. And I call it the golden era because I even called it out to a friend of mine. I said, in 10 years from now, all of this stuff is going to be bargain bin pricing, and people are going to be able to enter the wedding market at a much reduced rate than I did when I bought my gear brand new. And if you are in the market for cameras, I recommend buying used. The life cycle of a camera looks like this, especially if you're buying from, say you're buying used market, Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. Let's say the camera was bought by an enthusiast. The average life cycle of a camera is someone buys camera, gets in over the head, realizes they need more lenses that cost more money to actually take the types of photos they want. It sits for a long time. They never use as much as they thought they would, and then they sell it. And so there's a lot of low mileage used gear out there. And even if it's not low mileage, if it's got a high actuation count, you're looking at a $250, $300 shutter replacement if it's still a camera in service. So you might be able to, if something catastrophically fails on your camera body and the shutter goes out, you might be able to take it to a local repair place and have it repaired for a few $100s, or it might still be in service with Canon, Nikon, or Sony. So you would look into that before buying, do your diligence. But you could definitely get into a camera. And what's the investment on a camera I'm about to show you that's $550? If the shutter went out on it and the replacement was 300, you really aren't out that much difference than the camera body. Sometimes these bodies last much longer than their actuation rate. I actually knew. And there's a Tucson camera repair. There's a guy named John who repairs cameras there. He told me that he's had D810 bodies come in with 400,000 actuations, and I think they're rated for 150,000. So sometimes these cameras can outlive their rated actuation count. Now, what do I look for in a wedding camera? What should you look for in a wedding camera if this is your first camera? Yes, you can shoot APS-C. I'm not going to say you can't. Ideally, though, I think the standard across the industry is a full frame sensor, and it's definitely at least 20 megapixels. Could you shoot it with APS-C, a smaller sensor? Yes. Could you shoot it with less megapixels? Yes. It depends on your results, your final result, like what you're delivering to your client. I have an expectation for how the photography should look because full frame sensors, especially the lower megapixel range and the 20 megapixel range, have better high ISO performance. So that's my expectation for a camera because that's kind of the standard. It's what everybody's shooting with. Yes, you can be different. You can go shoot Fuji X-T5 and make beautiful images. I love Fuji cameras. I own one. I just don't shoot weddings with it. But the other important thing for me is speedy and accurate autofocus system. It needs to lock focus like at least 7 times out of 10. There's going to be photos it's going to miss. Like I've had cameras that couldn't capture somebody walking away or toward the camera and get every shot in focus. But now I shoot the camera that will miss maybe like 1 out of every 100 photos in that same sequence. That's just how good cameras have gotten now. But you definitely want a camera that's got a higher hit rate. So I think I've targeted some of those cameras that fit the billing here when you see the next slides that I've got. The other thing that I'm big on, and this is you cannot cross this at all with me. You have to get a dual memory card slot camera, and you have to shoot dual raw backups camera card to card on both slots. Like that's yeah. There's no arguing against that. Yes, you can shoot a wedding with one SD card or one card slot. The reason I advise against that is I have had cards in 20 years go corrupt on me. I have lost data on a memory card from a wedding, and I've never lost those wedding photos because I had a backup card. Had I only shot single slot, I would have been done for. What would you do if you lost everything up until the reception? What would you do if you lost all that? What would you tell the client? Would you be financially responsible? Would you I don't even think you could pay back the amount of money that it would cost for those memories. Like you would, it's like on our end, it's a certain set amount. On on the client's end, it's priceless. Like they can't do anything to get those photos back. So you have to shoot dual memory card slots in the case of catastrophic failure. And it's not just what if a card fails? What if you lose a card? What if you had a card stolen? I keep the cards, like when I'm done with a wedding, one set of cards stays in a card folder or card wallet, and the other set of cards stay in the camera. So I have them in two separate places. What if I lost my camera and had both memory cards in it from the entire wedding? You'd be done. So it's not just redundancy for the sake of data loss, it's actual theft. Or what if a memory card breaks? I've had memory cards break before, SD cards snap in half and fall apart. I couldn't figure out how to put it back together, but luckily I had a backup and I didn't have to worry about that. So it's redundancy on every possible front, not just data loss. So let's look at some quick cameras real quick. Some quick camera bodies here. If you are still shooting DSLR bodies, totally fine. And there is a huge ecosystem of lenses available to you. They're more cost effective. Everything I'm showing you here is priced used on Adorama right now. And if you told me 10 years ago that you could buy two camera bodies, because I recommend that as well on a wedding day, that you have two camera bodies. So everything you see here, think about buying it twice, because you shouldn't be shooting a wedding unless you have a backup body. If I lost one camera, which if a camera didn't work for whatever reason, and it happens, you got to have a backup. So you told me 10 years ago I could have two D750s for roughly $1,000, and I could probably outfit an entire wedding business for under $2,000 when you consider affordable lenses too. I would have been, yeah, I wouldn't have believed you, because that's a really low entry point to enter the market and be able to provide a professional service with backups in place. So here is your entry point. If you think that wedding photography is expensive, you are correct. It is expensive, but it doesn't mean it can't be affordable. And here is your bottom entry point. I can shoot. I've shot weddings with a D Mark V, D Mark III. I've shot weddings with a D750, and I've shot weddings with a D850. These are great prices to get all these cameras. I've had second shooters who still shoot 5D Mark IVs. These are all capable of producing professional images. They all have full frame sensors. They all perform astoundingly under low light conditions with high ISO performance. In the case of the D750 and the D850, they've got phenomenal, still competitive dynamic range, where you can recover at ISO 100. You can recover almost up to 3 stops of shadow detail. That still holds up today. The D850 is, to me, the best all around DSLR camera I've ever shot. It's high megapixel, and it even has a medium raw format, so you don't have to shoot weddings at the full. I think it's 42 megapixels. You could shoot them at like 21 or 22 megapixels at medium raw. So these are some great cameras to look at, and huge ecosystem of lenses to look at. And there's still some great Tamron lenses out there that you can use with these camera bodies. I've shot Tamron lenses on these camera bodies. But if you want to update and you want to be a little more up to speed on the current bodies out there, there's some mirrorless bodies. And these, to me, are all entry point cameras, or these are all professional capable cameras. I think you can create great results with these. They're basically mirrorless updates to the bodies I showed on the last screen. The Z8 is basically a D850 in mirrorless form, with better autofocus, better video capabilities. The sensor performance is a little bit better. It's a nice update to that DSLR experience if you want to translate that body into the mirrorless world. The R5, the first time I handled that camera, I thought it was the most intuitive. Like, I picked it up. I've been shooting Nikon for 7 years, and when I picked up the R5, I felt like it was a camera I could shoot the next day on a wedding. Like, right that moment, it felt capable in my hands, and I knew it was a very solid camera. So that camera is an excellent camera from Canon. The R6 Mark II is basically the R5 with less megapixels, and the A7 IV is a competitor to the R6 Mark II. I think it's around like 30 megapixels. That's a great camera body for shooting weddings. Real quick, we got a question. Chuck wants to know, are you saying use the second SD card as a backup, not just overflow? That's exactly what I'm saying. Do not shoot overflow. Shoot backups. Don't overflow is basically committing to the one card system. So shoot with two memory cards as backups. Don't do overflow. You may as well just be shooting one giant memory card at that point. Then if you're shooting overflow, shoot backup for redundancy. If you're shooting overflow, you do not have a redundant workflow. You are not protecting yourself from loss, theft, or damage or data loss. All right. Next page. So here's some of the mirrorless bodies I would enter into. I would consider like a high watermark for photographing weddings right now. These are all new prices on Adorama. So yeah, you're going to spend a little bit more money. But hey, if you go back to the previous slide, you know, if for the price of the A7 IV, you could have, you know, two cameras and some lenses. So don't think that if your budget is $2,000 that you don't have an entry point into the wedding market. Next is these are used camera body prices, and these to me are like some of the entry model. Well, actually, one's not an entry model, but these are some other alternatives at a lower price to enter the mirrorless body market and still produce high results. Like the Canon R6 has dual memory cards, dual memory card slots. It's around like 22 megapixels. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember all these bodies and their specs fully. The Nikon Z6 Mark II dual memory cards also shoots around like 20 some megapixels. The Nikon Z7 Mark II is like the D850 as well. It's got 42 megapixels. I think it's the same sensor as well. Dual memory card slots. Got the wrong camera picture in there. And then we've got the Sony A7R4. That's a higher megapixel body. It's 61 megapixels. You can shoot medium RAW with that, but I think it's priced at a great point. And the dynamic range and pixel quality on that camera is great too. That's why I threw it in there. I shoot with the Sony A1. Very cost prohibitive. That's a $7,000 camera after taxes, but it's like the best one camera I found that could do everything I wanted to do. I rank it up there with like Nikon's got the Z9 as well. Canon's got the R3, but I don't think they have as much megapixels in that camera. So enough about camera bodies. I just wanted to show you some price points. All of this is on Adorama, and these are some of the cameras that you can get into and shoot weddings excellently, even all the way back to the DSLR bodies. Sorry for this 90-minute long monologue. I always like it when this is a conversation. It's nice when there's banter back and forth, but now you get to look at me in front of a screen as I ramble about wedding photography and lenses. So what if I told you you could shoot an entire wedding with two focal lengths? And what if I told you you could shoot an entire wedding with just one lens? I think the misconception about wedding photography or photography in general is that more is more. I like a small kit. I like to have less gear on my body. I like to have less. I like to pare down to my bare minimal. Like this is all I need to photograph whatever I'm going to photograph. My dad does photography, and he's got more lenses than I do. And I'm the professional photographer, and he's retired from the Air Force. So he's got a lot more cool toys than I do. But I think you can really pare this kit down to the essential focal lengths that you need. And to me, that's two focal lengths, especially in terms of weddings. And we could tweak this a little bit. And I'll say how. But to me, the bare minimum kit for me, I can shoot an entire wedding day with a 35 millimeter lens and an 85 millimeter lens. I used to shoot two bodies on my body at the same time. Now I shoot one body. But when I shot two bodies, my left camera was a 35 millimeter, and then the right camera was an 85 millimeter lens attached to it. The reason why I focused on these two lenses is they do different things and they accomplish different objectives for me. The 35 millimeter, like you see on the screen here, it's what I use to cover everything that's going on. Like it's the event lens. It's the camera. It's the lens that is involved in the scene. It's what I use for group photos because it's a little bit wider. I do a lot of environmental portraits with it. The event setup, it's not as wide as you could possibly need. I think really, if you wanted to commit to a wider lens, I used to shoot 24-85, but I felt that when I shot 24 millimeters, I think the conception is when you walk into a room, a small room, and you're photographing wedding prep, everybody thinks that a wider lens shows you more of the room because small space, wider lens. That's how I see more. What I tended to find out was that I was just showing more negative space in the photo that didn't bring my eye closer to what was important in the photo. So when I got rid of the 24 and started shooting the 35, I felt like the camera was more involved with the scene and I was seeing less of the negative space that wasn't important to the image. Like, why do I need to see the ceiling in a small room or more of the floor, which is all you were really bringing into a photo? That's why I've landed on 35 as my ideal event coverage lens, my photojournalistic lens. You could pull this off with the 24, but I think you'll find you're cropping a lot. Yeah, I don't see as much of a room. Maybe like I'm doing an event setup and I want to see the whole room. Then maybe you could just turn your camera vertical and shoot a panorama if you're trying to show event setup. But I've never once I went 35 did I ever feel like, dang, I wish I could go wider. The other lens for me that is essential is the 85 millimeter focal length. This to me is Oh, we got a question from Chuck. How about a zoom? Maybe a 24 to 200. We're going to get to that when I talk about zooms. So zooms are definitely up for discussion. But for me, I'm going to hone on these focal lengths because it's I'm going to show you why these focal lengths are important and then how they're incorporated into my zoom camera use when I use zoom lenses. So to me, in 85, pretend these are not lenses we're talking about. We're just talking about focal lengths, and these two focal lengths can exist in one lens, like a zoom. So headshots, I like these for headshots. It's a very normal looking focal length without any weird compression or distortion. It's great for full body portraits. When I shoot a full body portrait at 35 millimeters, and I'm kind of like just below eye level, and I'm very close, and I'm filling the frame with a full body portrait. To me, that distortion, I can tell the difference. It looks a little wonky. At 85 millimeters, not so wonky. Even 50 millimeters. If you try to do a headshot at 35 millimeters, wonky. If you fill the frame with a 35 millimeter, you're going to get distortion at the extremities, the bottom and top of the head. You're going to see the nose kind of bow outward a little bit. An 85 at the appropriate distance, where you're filling the frame with the headshot or the three quarter shot or the full body portrait, you're not going to see that distortion. So to me, it's an essential lens for traditional portraiture. When you're doing vertical portraits, when you're doing primarily vertical portraits. I also like it for the longer reach. I feel like once you go to 85 and you get down to like 150, there isn't a lot of difference in how the photos appear to me. Yeah, 150 would be nice because I could, or 175 or 200. Like, yeah, if you can get in with the long lens, that's nice. But 85, I always felt like all I had to do with an 85, if I was shooting it as a prime, is to just step in closer. And to me, the perspective, there isn't much difference between a 150 millimeters from 100 feet away or 85 millimeters from 50 feet away. Just close the distance with your feet. So these are the two lenses. I've shot at least 100 weddings, just those two lenses alone. And this is for me to help you hone in on what lens do I buy to shoot a wedding. I think people overthink how many actual body lenses do they need on their camera body, and what they can get away with. I'm telling you right now, you can shoot an entire wedding day, these two focal lengths only. I have a friend, Timothy Irick. He shoots entire wedding days with a 50 millimeter prime and nothing else. So he doesn't have anything wider or nothing longer. And that's gutsy. I couldn't do that, but that's his style. And if you can commit to a focal length like this, it will show consistency in your work over time. You will see a big change in your work. You'll see a major consistency. It'll be because the visual language that you're communicating is going to be consistent from photo to photo. So once you hone in on this, if you're all over the place, like say you're shooting zooms, I still shoot zooms kind of like I do primes. If I have a 30, like a 24 to 7, I have a 28 to 75. I shoot the 28 and I shoot the 75. I rarely shoot the in between. I tend to treat it like it's just a dual purpose lens, like it's both of these primes. So think about committing to a focal length because it is going to give you consistency in your work over time. And it communicates different things. There's also the psychology of the lens too. I like to involve the lens with the action. So when I'm shooting 35, the camera's very close to what I'm shooting. And when I'm shooting 85, it's more paparazzi-esque. I kind of feel like it looks like you're viewing it as a paparazzi from the bushes. So when I shoot telephotos, like that tends to be the look of a telephoto lens, and I don't think that necessarily plays for everything wedding situation that you're in. But anyways, let's look at some of these pictures. I want to go through them a little quickly because I have a lot of slides still, but this is a 35 millimeter environmental portrait, bride and groom, center framed. I like shooting portraits this way of a couple. Um, 35 millimeter. Most of these photos are 35 millimeter until I get to later in the slides. But environmental portraiture. I love leading lines. I love using elements of the environment to take your eye to the subject. I use lighting in that way too. I use aperture for that purpose too, and to put the focal point on the face. My 35 is my photojournalistic, like capturing those little in between moments. I love capturing those moments that tell a story. This is what I was talking about, involving the lens with the moment. Yeah, you if you looked at this scene, I'm like 10 inches away from their faces here. I've prepped them for this. They know the camera's going to be there when they're sharing an intimate moment like that, and after a while, they just forget that I'm even there, and that's what leads to natural looking interactions with the couple for more candid types of portraits and pictures. This is 35 millimeter, right in your face. 35 millimeter. The groom turned around from the bride, and he that's his mother in the photo, and he put his forehead against her head. And I don't even need to explain it. This is like, you can see this is an emotional moment. To me, the most emotional moments for me happen with my 35 millimeter. For some reason, it's just always the lens that gets involved with these moments. So imagine this from 85 millimeters, and you're 10 feet away from this shot and you're shooting 85 millimeters. And now we're getting that paparazzi effect where you look like a guy in the bushes trying to capture a celebrity walking out of a coffee shop. But instead, we're involving the camera with the moment. And this is an intimate moment, and you are a participant in the memory. That's what I want couples to be. I want them to be participants in their memories when they look at their photos later. So now we're looking at my 85 millimeter focal length, and this is where I start shooting portraits with it. I like the qualities of an 85 millimeter. I like shooting at a wide open apertures and getting blurry backdrops. That's why we buy these primes, because you get blurry backgrounds from the bokeh effect. Like, I love that autofocus focal plane. Like, I love playing with that. It's how I draw attention to the most important part of the photo. And at 85, at 1.8, 1.4, it's very apparent. Traditional upright vertical portraits. I wouldn't shoot this vertical portrait with a 35 millimeter. Too much distortion. You'd start getting, big feet and like stretched out heads if you're too close to your subject. So 85 is a very safe space to shoot, focal length to shoot these types of portraits. This photo would look different at 35 millimeters if I was closer to them. I wanted a little bit of that background compression. I wanted to stack some of the background elements in a row after the bride and groom. So like, telephoto can only get you that effect when you're trying to get when you want to get that effect, you've got to shoot telephoto. Again, the compression of an 85 millimeter, stacking foreground, middle ground, and background elements, getting those leading lines going to your couple. All very important in how I do photography and how I focus on the action. I love to center compose a kiss photo like this, and have them have the background blurry, out of focus in the background. 85 millimeters. Now, the question of zooms came up. So I was team prime for a solid 7, 8 years where I shot nothing but primes. And I think now I'm in my zoom era. However, I might be back in my prime era again because I miss them. But the reason I think everybody should shoot primes and commit to a couple focal lengths, especially with weddings, is it gets you in a compositional state of mind. When I shoot primes, I have to involve my entire body with the act of creation, because there is no zooming the camera lens in to get a closer view. There's walking closer and walking further away, and really involving the camera with what you're trying to photograph. And I think that is a fundamental of photography that many people are missing when they do not shoot primes. Um, I'm not saying you can't shoot zooms. I'm saying that there is an appreciable there's appreciable value of shooting primes that affects how you perform the act of photography. When I shoot with primes, what I learned from shooting primes was if I wanted to get closer and the action was somewhere, like I had to like drop down on my knee, I had to get closer, I had to really move around, and it made me more active as a photographer. And I think when you learn those skills, now the camera is an extension of my creativity. Now, especially with my camera, the camera that I shoot now, and with the zoom lenses I have now, I I already know where to position the camera to get the peak creative angle for what I'm trying to accomplish. Like I don't even need to look at the lens half the time because I can tell at 24 or 35 millimeters and where my camera is and what's happening in front of me. It's like I've had moments for where my camera came off my hip, it went up in the air, and it was already jockeying for position of where I thought the action was happening, and I nailed the shot without having to look at the viewfinder or the screen. I was shooting before my eye got there because before with DSLRs, it was pull camera up, bring to face, hope that it was on, acquire focus, focus and recompose, and then shoot. Now with the speed of autofocus, with the speed of the accuracy of these autofocus systems, I can just shoot from the hip and get what I'm looking for. And so I think shooting primes you for that. So the advantages of shooting primes, wider apertures. So that's why we get our 1.4s, our 1.2s, our 1.0s. Like that stuff happens with primes. The advantage of that is less moving parts. It's not a dust vacuum. So I feel like my primes lenses were always cleaner than my zoom lenses. And you get unique lens characteristics that don't happen with zooms because you are shooting at those apertures. I like shooting at 34 1.4 wide open because there's something interesting about how it renders the subject and how it renders the out of focus areas, and it just makes for this three-dimensional feeling type image with a two-dimensional space. The con, of course, is not as versatile. I am limited, so it depends on what I'm shooting. Maybe when I want to be more creative and I'm in a creative headspace, maybe it's primes. When I'm more utilitarian and I want to be more effective, it's zooms because of the variable focal length. The only con being more moving parts and they're more susceptible to dust. Like I definitely feel like I have to do a lot more cleaning on my zoom lenses. I'm very diligent about cleaning the bodies. Now, you don't get as wide apertures as a prime. So one of my primes is a 35 to 150 f2 to 2.8. I would love it if I could have like a 1.4 at that focal length, but it's the physics of it doesn't match up. So these are some of my my pros and cons to shooting primes versus zooms. I'm definitely, like I said before, I'm in my zoom era now though. I shoot Sony. Because of my relationship with Tamron, I exclusively use their lenses, and I'm proud to say that these lenses are everything that I need them to be at this phase of my career. I shoot a lot more industrial, more commercial, more event coverage, and this lens is the holy grail of lenses. It fits that it has that 35-85 in it, and I've got the extra zoom range on it. And it's 35 millimeter f2, and as you get to 75 millimeter, it becomes a 2.8. I spent a lot of time at 35 f2 for that documentary type photography that I do, some of the creative stuff I do at that wider aperture. I love the look of a telephoto portrait on the long end, so I tend to stick around at 85. I shoot portraits at 85, and if I really need to reach, the 150 is there. And this lens, I can shoot everything for the rest of my life with just this lens alone, barring any like of the 1% type of jobs that come up where I need something extra wide. This is the pricing on Adorama's website. It's also available. This is Sony. I have the Sony FE mount. There's also Nikon Z mount available too. I think it's $100 more. So that lens does exist on Nikon mirrorless. I don't know when it's coming or if it's coming for Canon, but hopefully it does someday because I know a lot of Canon shooters would be happy. This is my more practical shoot an entire wedding lens. if you picked up a Sony body or a Nikon body and you can get this lens for $700 roughly on Adorama, I could shoot an entire wedding day with just this lens alone. I do a lot of my heavy lifting type work for my day-to-day stuff, my commercial photography where I'm shooting like marketing type stuff. I could shoot, if I had to pick one lens for the rest of my career, it's this or the 35 to 150, but I could do that. This lens right here, I bring this lens out when I'm late into an event and I'm tired of carrying around a bigger camera lens setup. I can shoot this on my body, a camera body, and not feel any any penalty of heavier weight on my body. Like my kid is very low weight now. I don't dual carry cameras anymore because that's a 20-year-old guy's game. I don't like back pain, so I shoot everything with a spider holster, one body, and a zoom like this lens or the 35 to 150. It's just at this phase of my career, it saves me a lot of wear and tear and a lot of appointments to the chiropractor. Um, so I'm showing you pictures from the 35 to 150 just to give you an example of zoom range here. So I think I'm at around like 85 millimeters here with the 35 to 150, and then boom, without moving, 35 millimeters. So you get the versatility of being able to get different types of compositions very quickly. However, I still want you to be in a prime state of mind. Think about how to involve your body in the act of photography. What is the relationship between the focal length you're at to the distance to your subject and the composition that you're trying to achieve? You have to understand those things. It only comes with practice. And after a while, you understand those relationships between distance, focal length, and distance to subject and focal length. So those are key components of shooting with primes that I've carried over into shooting with zooms. I still move like I shoot with primes. Here's another example of 35 millimeters. Next shot, I think we're at 75, 85 millimeters, and then last shot, 150 millimeters. And you'll notice I feel like between 85 to 150, that the 150 just feels like a tight crop of the 85. That's why I said before, I don't feel like 85 to the longer focal lengths is really that much different. So if you're going to pick two lenses, pick a 35-85. That 85, you don't need a longer lens. You just got to wait for the subject to fill the frame, or you got to get closer. Still photographing my environmental portraits, still very much running and gunning and involving the camera with my subjects, shooting environmental compositions. This is 35 millimeters. And involving the camera in intimate moments. Again, I want you to feel like a participant in this memory. Had I shot this at 85 millimeters from 10 feet away, it feels like the paparazzi in the bushes. So involve your camera. Ask for your customers, for your clients, for access to them. Ask for that type of access. Like, let them know I'm going to be right there in your airspace, and like, I don't want you to be surprised. That's how I shoot, and prime them for this. Let's talk about flash. Some of you might say I'm a natural light photographer, and that is okay. It's still not absolving you from buying a flash. You have to have a flash in your bag because there are going to be lighting and scenarios that you encounter that you are not going to be ready for. So pack a flash. I don't care if you shoot it on camera or off camera. If you're shooting it off camera, obviously there's a learning curve involved, and you're going to be having to figure out triggering it and the settings to balance your exposure with your ambient. It's a whole lot. If you at least have it, because in a pinch, if you don't know what you're doing, throw that thing on TTL. It's like an automatic exposure mode. I won't go into like what the camera's doing instead of manual, but in a pinch, if you were in over your head, the lighting sucked, all the stuff starts happening. Throw that flash on your camera, point it straight at your subject's direct flash, and set it to TTL. At the very least, spray and pray, because you're going to get something. It's gonna get you something. And luckily for flash shooters now, direct flash is suddenly in vogue now with wedding photography. I feel like a lot of me and a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my photographer friends who are also educators, we we have all tried so hard to drive our work and effectively the industry into this beautiful off-camera flash lit space that has more color in it and has more shape and light. And then suddenly, this paparazzi look came back into play because Ariana Grande got married and her photographer did like exclusively direct on-camera flash work, and now that's in vogue. So if all else fails, throw your flash on, direct flash, aim it at your subjects. It's a look. I don't think it's my look. It's kind of harsh and it tends to be flat and it's not very flattering personally, but it is a look and it does have a type of aesthetic to it that appeals to certain customers. It's actually now associated with like celebrity wedding look. So it may not be your look, but it might be somebody's look. So in a pinch, your flash can save your butt. So have one in your bag. Now, you may be like me and you have a roadmap in mind for how you want to grow your flash use. So you might start with that on-camera flash on the left, but after a while you're like, it'd be cool is if I could get another flash that will work with this flash, and then together I could shoot with this on camera, and this flash could be in the corner of the room, and I can use it as a backlight. Or you might decide like I need a bigger flash because I want to photograph big portraits in bright sunny conditions with a 60-inch umbrella or octobox. And then you get the 8400 here. And all of these this is from the Godox line of flashes, but they're known as Flashpoint at Adorama, all available in Adorama. I shoot this system. I use these flashes for the work I do. And then maybe down the road, you're like, I need to be able to photograph high-speed sync at f1.8 on a high noon day, and I want an assistant to carry around a power pack with a 1200-watt strobe, and you buy the 80-1200 in the end. All of these lights live in the same ecosystem. There's other flashes that you can work with. There's also Westcott. There's ProPhoto if you feel like paying that premium. So those all exist. Like all those systems exist. You want to look for a flash system that has growth potential. I'm not saying it's a bad idea to buy first-party brand flashes like Canon, Nikon, or Sony's, but they are prohibitive in that there is no roadmap for you to grow into a system. So if you have that one speed light on the left side, the B1 on your camera, it can remote control every other flash in this picture on the slide here and control their power, turn the groups on and off, and change their zoom range. You can play with those things from this one flash here. So look at this could be a roadmap for you growing your future in flash, but at the very least, you start with the one on the left and maybe you end up someday in the one on the far right. This is one flash. With one flash, I can do a lot of damage. I can do a long shutter speed photo, a 1 second. I think this is a 1 second exposure here, maybe like a half a second. And I did rear curtain sync, so the flash pulsated at the very end of the exposure, freezing the subjects in the middle. And I was able to do this with one flash. At the very least, if you could shoot a whole wedding reception like this, you would turn a lot of heads and you would make a lot of people happy. And that's with one flash. So don't underestimate the power of one direct flash. Perhaps you get into the off-camera flashlighting aspect and you want to, do a well-balanced exposure with, I shot with a 42-inch softbox here. I don't want the work to necessarily look extremely flashy. This is a family portrait, and I want to make sure that they look well lit without being like overly flashy. Because sometimes work can be very flash heavy, and you'll see some of my work that's very flash heavy. One flash, you can do this with a speed light or an 8200 with a gel on the back of it, and I like to shoot like epic looking silhouettes. It's just a fun piece of equipment to add a little bit of pop of color into your work and give your couples something romantic and different from the other stuff they saw from the rest of their wedding days. Just think of like wedding photos as all pieces of one giant piece of art. This wouldn't be the only photo they see from this portrait session on their wedding day. They're going to see other pictures too, but I love to have one of these kind of photos peppered in with their coverage because they're going to see it and maybe it's one of their favorite photos. I love playing with flash late at night. Get the groom out with a cigar and take him outside to the side of the barn and have him light it up. Two flashes here, one behind him pointed at the barn door. No, it's pointed at him. It's backlighting the smoke from the cigar while also getting some light onto the barn door, and then I've got a light directly in front of him to the right of the frame, pointed at his face. This is this is the one I hope like this could be like a an acrylic print in his man cave or something. You know, I love giving everybody like a piece of themselves in their wedding day in a way that they've never seen themselves. I want them to have like an unforgettable photo that they never something they've never seen before. So, okay, we got about 25 minutes here. Let's go through an entire wedding day in pictures. I'm going to try to talk through these moments a little quicker and hopefully we get to the end and to the part where you're saving your photos on your hard drive. But uh, hang in here with me as we push through these photos. Um, so, did you have a pre-wedding planning call with the couple and go over the wedding schedule? What kind of attire are you wearing on your wedding day? You should dress comfortably, but also appropriate for the moment. I think like the official wedding photographer outfit is like black pants, black polo, black shoes. Like for some reason, we like to dress like ninjas. But I know people who wear three-piece suits and go all out. Paul Van Ryder he's an ambassador for Fujifilm. That is the sharpest dressed man I've ever seen at a wedding. Miles Whitbauer, he dresses up in full tuxedos. So if you want to go to that length, like it sometimes I have it on my intake form, like what's your wedding colors? What's your attire going to be like? I've been to beach weddings where I dressed in khakis and boat shoes. So sometimes you want to fit in with the crowd. So it's dress to impress too. Like this is also an impression that you're leaving on people. Like everybody's got varying degrees of fashion sense, but it is an impression you're leaving on people. And if you want return work or you want other people to notice you, like who was that sharp dressed, talented photographer? That might be an in for you with future work. So, fashion's your thing, lean into it. The day before a wedding, did you charge your batteries, pack your no, I got the slide wrong. Pack your bag, format your memory cards the day before. If you didn't, you shouldn't be doing it on the day of. I've learned this lesson. Take it from me. I've been getting ready for a wedding up until the moment I left, and certain cards weren't formatted, and batteries weren't charged all the way. Don't do that. So now my bag is set well in advance. Everything's ready the day before. The day before the wedding, the day of the wedding, what I want to be doing before a wedding is having lunch with my family, or sometimes I drive early if I can grab lunch on the way and eat in my car. Like I'd rather just be on site because you never know what's going to happen. And I want to be playing video games or listening to music. So whatever you can do to get yourself in the mindset of like creativity and relaxation and like being in a peaceful state, like that's how I approach wedding day. Don't do stuff that makes you stressful before the wedding. Try to be as calm as possible and be there with like positive energy to give. Have you mapped out your route to the venue? Every year in Tucson, there is in November, and without fail, there's a yearly 100-mile bicycle race that goes all around the town. They've actually changed the map in recent years, but it used to block. I think for like I had a 4-year stretch where I booked a wedding every time we had the Tour de Tucson, and I had to figure out transit around the Tour de Tucson, which caused like diversions and where I was driving, and it was either right on time or just barely late for wedding prep. So be mindful of like what your route is going to be and how you're going to get to places and at what time. So, wedding day. Let's breeze this really quickly. Weddings are crazy. If you want to shoot weddings, you're crazy too. Um, you're dealing with like people either at their best and their worst, and you've got a lot of personalities. You've got strong personalities. You've got pensive and tense personalities. Like you just have to observe everything that's going on. When I walked into a wedding room and I noticed the bride is stressed out, and I pick up on like there's something going on here with one of her bridesmaids or something like that. I key in on that, and so I have a story. Like I walked into a wedding one time, and the bride was on the verge of tears. She was having a nervous breakdown, and nobody noticed it but me. And I told everybody in the room, "Hey guys, I need to clear the room. I'm going to be doing some photos with the bride. I need you all out." And of the bride said, "Me too." I was like, "Yep, you too." And I kicked them all out of the room. "Give me 5 minutes. We just need to do a few photos. Thank you." And everybody left the room. And I sat down with the bride, and I poured her a mimosa, and I brought it over. And I said, "We're not taking any pictures for the next 10 minutes. I need you to calm down. we're not doing any photos, don't worry. And she grabbed my hand and she said, thank you. So you got to pay attention to that. I saved her in that moment because I saw her breakdown happening, and I can't photograph stressed out brides. Like I can't photograph somebody who is in the middle of a breakdown. So pay attention to that. Well, pay attention to people and their energy. You are a armchair psychologist on wedding day. You can't photograph unhappy people, stressed out people. So understand those things are happening, and try to take control of the situation. You need to make a relaxed environment for people. And if distractions are around, like maybe you're photographing family portraits and some guests are like standing by, like heckling the bride and groom, like giving, just giving them crap for fun. Like I've had every version of that shooting weddings. And sometimes you feel like, hey guys, I just need 10 minutes. Can you join the rest of the guests while I finish photographing these family portraits? We're almost done here and they're going to join you. Like that little bit of assertiveness shows you taking control of the situation, and it gets you closer to your goal of finishing the photography so everybody can have a good time. Stay calm. So this is probably the time that I decided that I think I'm done with weddings. I had a bridesmaid's husband threatened to kill me on the wedding day. He was under the impression that I was making advances on his wife at the rehearsal dinner that I was photographing 2 days prior. And on the day of, he thought it was a good time to tell me that if I went anywhere near his wife, he was going to go to his car, get his gun, and shoot me. So first of all, in your contract, that's like that you need to have a clause in there that says if you're under any kind of threat of harm or any kind of like danger, illness, whatever, that you can leave without any negative repercussions. Like it's in my contract. So right then in that moment, I could have left the wedding. Instead, I went to the groom's room and I told him what had happened. And I said they asked if they should call the police, and I said, no, I need you all to be very vigilant about him and where he is on the wedding day, because I have to obviously photograph his wife in the wedding party. And they were up to speed on what was going on. And it really ruined me that day because I had a hard time finishing out the work because I was always paying attention to where he was. But we didn't tell the bride. The game plan was don't tell the bride. The bride didn't even know when I delivered her photos. Like 2 months later, I delivered the final photos, and she had no idea what had happened. So stay calm, be in control, make sure that you have a game plan when those kind of things happen. I could have left. I could have had my second shooter photograph the rest of the day, and I could have just removed myself from the situation. Whatever you have to do, always have solid boundaries, have language in your contracts that protects you and puts your safety first, and just be ready. After that, I realized I never know what could happen on a wedding day. So yeah, that was when I knew I was done with weddings, because nobody's threatened to kill me while I'm photographing rocks and missiles. And also vendor relations. Introduce yourself to everyone. Why are you not going to, like, I've had photographers who never talked to the wedding videographer who was standing 5 feet in front of the wedding couple before the ceremony. Like, why would you not have that conversation? Be proactive. Also establish like healthy relationships, because maybe you'll get a referral from the florist who you complimented her on her flowers, or the videographer that you looped in on the schedule when you decided to go take portraits of the bride and groom and brought them along with you. So vendor relations are key to your future in the industry. They're very helpful, and it's because of those vendor relations I had a lot of success in weddings in my local market. So the art of storytelling, which I'm going to demonstrate in these images after these slides here. I want you to have the foresight to anticipate like what moment's coming next. Like if you need to know, you gotta. Oh, that's my daughter. You need to know when the kiss is going to happen, or when the ring exchange is going to happen, or that when the bride's father brings her out, that there's going to be a hug and maybe a kiss on the cheek. Like you need to know those things. Like have the foresight to understand that and expect those things happening, or just the intuition that something is about to happen. Keep your camera up. Don't put it down. Always have it ready and within close view of your viewfinder that you can put it up to your face, or you can see your LCD. Have it ready to shoot at all times. Don't put it down on your waist. You can also, if we're shooting more directed, candid type stuff, where you can give kind of posing ideas and moments to your subjects where you're telling them, like I got a fun one that I'll share in the future slides here, but you can direct your subjects into these moments a little bit too, and also make it look candid as well. And then lastly, shoot through the moment. Keep pressing the shutter, even when you think the moment's passed, because sometimes there might be a residual or an extra moment that happens afterwards. Sometimes the best candid shots happen after the moment had occurred that I thought I was supposed to capture. So. Like this is an example of me shooting through the moment. The bride and groom are actually on the left side. The groom is the one on focus with the glasses, and the bride is in front of him, looking back at the camera with a big smile. And I didn't know that the two bridesmaids in the back were going to kiss for this photo. So I got the first photo of the bride and groom, and then I kept shooting through the moment. And when I saw the picture after the fact, I noticed that they had kissed, and I thought this was a great candid moment that happened naturally naturally unfolded in front of me. Again, 35 millimeters, involving the camera in the action because that's my favorite thing to do with 35 millimeter. You're right up in there. 35 millimeter shooting. This is what I call directed candid moments where, and I got this from Pi Jirsa from SLR Lounge. He gave. I'm pretty sure I've heard him say this. When he has the groom get really close to the bride's ear, and then you tell them to whisper their favorite vegetable into their ear, real sexy. And I'm pretty sure he said something like, eggplant or cucumber here because she had a big laugh after it. So it's a candid moment, but you are directing them through this posing and into this moment. So I put the pieces together. I gave them the ammunition, and then he took the shot, and this is what we got. A little bit about conquering the lighting challenges on a wedding day. Generally, like you might think my work is flash heavy when you look at some of my slides, but it's also very naturally lit driven. So I'm responding to the light that I see in the scene and trying to find the best spots to photograph subjects in a flattering way. I'm also looking for hard light, like maybe direct sunlight that's coming into a space in an interesting manner. If I'm bringing in flash photography, I want to make sure that my flash photography is balanced and looks intuitive to the scene, like it doesn't look too out of place. And then I love using flash photography or natural light to get dramatic cinematic type portraits. You'll see a lot of that ends up, kind of being hard light photos, but you'll see that when I go through these slides. So let's talk through a wedding day real quick. We are getting tight on time. All right. Wedding prep. I've walked into the bridal suite. We're getting ready for the wedding day, and it's detail time. They just want to see me. I want them to see me, get them comfortable with my presence. I'm looking for soft light, or maybe I find interesting light, cool texture, cool patterns in the background. So I thought this was a great top-down photo opportunity to photograph the shoes. I also found like the sliver of light coming through the window, and I thought that'd be a nice place to put the ring. And I'm leveraging this hard light to make for like a stark composition. I think it looks more cinematic, more dramatic, and I'm very big into cinema. I'm inspired by it greatly, and it shows up in my work. This photo, I set up the dress on the actually. So I'm inside this bathroom. I'm looking out the crack of the door at a mirror, and the dress is hanging on the door that's directly in front of me. The reason I did this was I didn't have like an interesting place to hang the door, and I didn't have enough space in the hallway to like photograph the dress on the door from the hallway. So I don't know why I'm in the mirrors, and I kind of doubled my real estate. So I thought like, hey, why not like go in the bathroom and photograph this dress hanging on the door. So I overcame this lighting challenge by it was poorly lit naturally, so I threw a flash just out of frame to the right into the hallway. I want it to look like window light coming into the space, so I hope I achieved that with the flash in this photo. Whenever brides are getting ready for makeup and hair, and getting their makeup and hair done, there's always this tendency for the makeup artists and hairstylists to put them near a mirror and throw their little ring light up. And that's a good look. But if the light is poor, never be afraid to assert yourself and ask the makeup artist, hey, can we move this scene over to the window? Window light is my friend. It's my favorite thing to shoot with. I love soft, nice, indirect window light. And so take charge, move your subjects wherever you want them to, just assert yourself in the moment. And then here I threw a flash behind the bride, and asked, what's your favorite color? And she said pink. And I threw a pink gel on the flash. And then I had the makeup artist spray her setting spray on the bride's face, and that's a great moment to like backlight some spray. Just a creative thing. Another thing I picked up from Pi Jirsa. He's like the pioneer of this type of photo, and it's been all over social media for like the last 10 years since Magmod became a thing. Um, I like to look for ways to isolate a subject in a frame and show and take bring leading lines to the subject. I had her facing a window in front of her, nice soft window light. If I could have this moment back, I would close the blinds behind her because there was plenty of light coming from the window directly in front of her. I just like these little moments to like feel like a little like I want this one I did want to look kind of voyeuristic, like I'm like observing as an outside observer and just making it showing a private moment between the bride and her mother. I think voyeuristic was a bad word to use. I think that has like sexual proclivities. My bad. Shooting 35 millimeters here. Got some nice window light coming out, capturing a moment. It's a funny moment for brides because who puts on shoes? Who puts on your shoes for you as an adult? You rarely have that happen, but it happens on wedding day. So she was just having a good laugh out of her friend putting on her shoes. Just a little bit of storytelling here of like capturing this moment here. Window light again, my friend. You'll see that I'm directing a lot of these photos with window light because it's a lot easier than setting up a light stand and positioning flashes everywhere. So when I'm in a rush, like I look for the best available light, and there's wonderful light coming into the space, great leading lines, shooting at I think 35 millimeters here. I always like to compose things in the middle thirds of an image. So your eye, I want everything to take all the leading lines to bring you right to the bride in the corner of the shot. 8 minutes. If you're not inside, like this is a pretty warm day. It was like high noon, so you have to seek refuge in spaces where light is coming into. So if you can't pull off being out in direct light because it's too hot or the light is too harsh at the wrong time of day, you have to seek out areas where indirect light is coming into a space. So anytime you're under an overhang like this, like a patio type structure, light is always going to be coming into it, and that is indirect light versus direct light where it's actual sunlight hitting her, which might be some of those straight rays of light that are hitting her shoulder and her hair. But I want indirect light coming into a space because it's gonna dictate how I pose her. It's gonna dictate how I position her face relative to the light source, how I shape and define the body. So pay attention to spaces like this where light is coming into a space. Oftentimes, when I'm working with groomsmen, they get the worst accommodations for photo prep. So I had an assistant with me holding a light. I'm using a mag sphere from Magmod on my flash to get a round sculpted light going on, and I just shoot for more dramatic, tight lighting on my subjects in these spaces because this light had terrible lighting and this space had terrible lighting and there wasn't a lot of light to play with. What are you going to do if you don't have great light in the space? You have to take charge of light. That's why it's important to learn flash photography. Chuck asks, do you try to scope out venue days, weeks beforehand if possible? I used to. I used to be pretty good about like showing up to wedding. I would go at least go to wedding rehearsal and check out the space if I was unfamiliar to get a feel for it and understand what it looked like at a certain time of day. But I think as you progress in your photography and you get more capable at this, you're going to start getting better at walking into a place sight unseen and just adapting to what the space is giving you. I I think any proficient photographer should be able to like drop them off in the middle of a town somewhere, anywhere. Like give me a dirty alleyway. I don't care where it is. You can find something everywhere. So I used to be a better scouter. Sometimes it calls for it, but I think as you get better, as you progress, you tend to get into a flow state where you react to what you're seeing around you and you just go with it. All right. And then with groom prep, sometimes you get a guy who might be maybe he's in good shape and he wanted to do something fun. And I've seen my friends do this kind of photo. I was like, hey, I told him this guy's name was Mike. I was like, hey, want to do something that'll surprise the heck out of the bride? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And so he was wearing trunks or he had his underwear on still. I just thought it would be fun. Like I wanted to put it like a little smoke show in the wedding album for the bride. So when they see this picture, she's like, what the heck was that? Because this is just for them. So this is the opportunity when the downtime is happening and things are slow. Take some risk and play around with the photos. So I don't feel like this really fits in the context of a wedding. It looks very out of place now that I see it on its own. But in the middle of their wedding coverage, I know she had a good time with this photo. When I'm shooting, as I'm progressing through the wedding prep, and now we're shooting portraits of the groom, and you're going to see a hodgepodge. These are not all from one wedding. I start safe. I look for soft light. I want a traditional vertical portrait, probably shot this at 85 millimeters or something close to it. I want a safe portrait. Then the cinematic mind in me wants something a little more mysterious, a little darker, a little more edgy. And so now I'm shooting with more direct light on him from the sun hitting him directly and playing with some foreground, some composition stacking here where the foreground is out of focus and then we have the middle ground and then the background. So this was my progression. I get the safe shot, then we go a little more edgy, and then maybe I pull out the flash and we go for something just completely different. And it's still kind of got that cinematic hard edgy light feel from the previous photo, but now I've got a flash in front of him and I'm using this window as a framing element to kind of give them some negative space around them and get this cool environmental portrait look going on. I like playing with framing elements like this. And that's how I might spend my time with the groom. And also I want to get some detail shots. I'll get maybe a headshot, maybe some photos of like his hands on his buttons, like he's button up his jacket, or like cufflink adjustment or wristwatch adjustment. It's okay to have a routine, and I've probably done the same routine with every wedding that I've shot, but every couple is going to see it as their first time seeing these photos. So even though it's routine to you, develop a strong routine, do the same things, because the one thing will be different will be the location of the wedding, where you're at, and the people you're with, and the time of day. So even if it feels redundant, maybe if it feels like you're like performing the same act over and over again, like a 80s rock band, like just get in the habit of doing these things, because when you're in a hurry and you're in a rush and things start to fall apart, if you've got a solid routine, you're always going to get results for your couples that they're going to appreciate. So make sure you get a solid routine going, because when you have the extra time, that's when you experiment and do the stuff that maybe may or may not play out well in the final wedding coverage. So maybe that's when you play. It's after you're done with your routine. After I photograph the bride and groom, getting ready, then maybe there's a first look. And this is my storytelling here. Like I want to show that, this is the time of the day when they're doing the first look. So this is how I intentionally frame this. I cut his head off. I want her to be the focus of the photo. I want to show some tension of like he's anticipating her coming and she's walking up to him. And this is how I'm storytelling, because the next frame is going to tell the next part of the story. And try to think of photos as a sequence of images and not just one standalone photo. So she taps him on the shoulder. And I'm going to be truthful here. I didn't get a great response photo out of them, so I just went straight to the kiss photo in the next frame. But that sequence tells a story. And I set the sequence up. I told them where to stand. I thought for the most ideal lighting. I thought about where I could stand in this doorway here. Sorry, guys, my daughter is. Oh no, my daughter really wants to play right now. One second. Okay, so I set the sequence up, and these photos all play in a series together, because I had that in mind. Like we're going to cover this part of the wedding day in this lighting. Like I wanted it to look. It was all intentional. Sorry, I'm so thrown off right now because my daughter's crying. Okay. And then we move into portraits. So I've got the bride and groom together. Usually these kind of portraits happen after the ceremony, but because we did a first look, now you've got extra time. So I like to encourage couples to do a first look, but sometimes they want to be more traditional. They only want to see each other at the wedding site for the first time. So there's no wrong or right answer to that, but every time you get a first look in, it's like a bonus for me because I get to spend more time with the couple and get some more standard portraits. So this to me is like a great, like nicely, solidly, softly lit portrait. It's meat and potatoes. It's not like extra creative in terms of like some of the crazy stuff I do with lighting. It's just a good solid place to be for a bride and groom's portrait. Then we go into the ceremony, where you position. You're at the mercy of the ceremony lighting, unfortunately. So no matter how crappy the lighting is, you're just gonna have to deal with it. And sometimes you're gonna have to make decisions about where you're standing based on where the light is relative to your subjects. And you'll see that in some of the photos I'm going to show. But beginning the ceremony, you're standing, probably at right where the groom is standing, and you're photographing the procession coming on, the wedding procession. And I spend a lot of time with my 35 here. I get close. Like this is the wedding ceremony. I'm everywhere. Bride and groom are expecting it. I let the officiant know it. Hey, let them know, hey, I'm going to be very close. If there's any no-fly zones, let me know where you don't want me, and I'll avoid it. But generally, if you're friendly, people are going to allow you to stand wherever you need to do your job. It's a little harder in churches. I had a priest get pretty upset with me before, more than one. So again, rapport building is important. That's why you have to ask these questions. Let these people know. Ask the right questions at your consultation. Let them know where you want to be and where you plan to be. I like being close to the moments like this. You can't get this photo, from down the wedding aisle with a telephoto lens. You have to be there, part of the action. A tale of two photos here. So I'm standing. This is my kiss shot, and I had a feeling that I wasn't gonna like the kiss photo angle just because of the lighting. I wasn't crazy about it. Um, I had a feeling. So before the ceremony, I told the officiant, hey, when the kiss happens, I need you to slide out of frame like 3, 4 steps. And I had my second shooter on the other side of the bride and groom taking the riskier shot, but the one that I thought would pay off more. And so it always pays to have a plan based on the lighting. I just wasn't crazy about this. So the next shot was actually my second shooter shot. And I think this is the photo here. My kiss photo does not hold up to this kiss photo. So you have to have the foresight to think, where is the light best? Where is the moment best? How are they going to turn on the kiss? This to me is a much more successful kiss photo because of the intimacy of it. It's closer. You got the view of everybody clapping in the background. So have a plan, because sometimes you might get the photo that you didn't expect from a different angle. And then if you look between their bodies here, you can actually see me shooting from the other side. So try not to cross streams when you're doing a photo like this. Make sure you guys can position things out differently. If I could fix this photo now, I'd probably just throw a Gen Fill filter on. It'd be real easy to throw some Photoshop and use AI to mask me out. Okay, now I'm gonna do a close here. Now we're at the family portraits here. The reason I'm showing this photo is it's both families together. We've got the mother and father and brother on one side, mother, father, sister, and her husband on the other side. I mean, these family arrangements can get much bigger, much smaller, but I want to give you kind of a game plan for how to shoot these. So I like to keep everybody close to the bride and groom. The bride and groom never leave these photos. And I might start with both the mothers. Now let's bring in both the fathers. Let's take the mothers out and leave just the fathers in. Let's bring the mothers in. Let's bring the brothers and sisters in. And then now let's take away one family. And now we do this family's photos. And now we move them out and we bring the other family photo in. So I've got an arrangement that involves every type of family unit, from mothers to fathers to siblings or grandparents. And I build them up one by one, and then I take one group away. Then we focus on the family photos with one side, then we focus on family photos with the other side. But if you can keep everybody positioned relatively close and kind of do this Simon Says game of who comes in and who comes out, you can get through family portraits so quickly. Now, is it always interesting, like to have everybody in the same line? No, there's other ways to arrange people, and I have another photo as an example of that. But keep in mind, like if you're working with big groups of people and you want to keep this to immediate family, you can build up your shot list and then work with each group of family individually, but get into a habit of building the photo up one by one. And then I can have everybody take one big step away from each other, so there's some space between them, and I can shoot a headshot of everybody in the family. And now for the wedding album, they've got a portrait of everybody in the wedding individually from their family. So here's how I arranged another group photo of the parents with the bride and groom. So try to think of other ways to break up the space. Like, it doesn't have to be one straight line of people shoulder to shoulder. We can if there's pairings of people going on and groupings of people, uh, start trying to arrange them in more interesting, compelling ways. Oh, I don't know what photo was missing there. Okay. So I think the previous photo was a group photo of the bridesmaids. Again, here's an opportunity to now focus on the vendor work. Make everyone take a few steps away, step out a few steps away from each other, and then zoom in on the floral work. So I always do this with bridal parties because I can then send this to the wedding florist afterward, and they love it because now they've got a nice photo piece of their work. So do this. I also do it for hair too. I'll have the bridesmaids, if they have an interesting hair work going on, I'll focus on their hair. Do one-on-one portraits with each bridesmaid with your bride, because you never know. Like this, these are the only opportunities you have to get these photos. Oftentimes with people, they all come from different places. You never know who's going to be gone tomorrow. And I've had that happen where somebody passed from a wedding and all they had left recently was a photo from the wedding. So try to make one-on-one moments happen with the bride and groom with their respective wedding party members and their families. So always make sure brides get a photo with mom, get a photo with dad, hopefully both of them if everything's kosher, everything works together in their family. So make sure you give the couples one-on-ones with everybody because everybody's important on their wedding day. And sometimes we're dealing with odd arrangements of people. I hate when there is a odd number of wedding party members and with the bride and groom, because then it makes for weird stacking of people. So like I like to play with arrangements. Like if it's what's ideal is when you have like two groomsmen, two bridesmaids, four groomsmen, four bridesmaids. It makes it much easier to arrange people. But we had odd numbers of groomsmen and bridesmaids, and so I played with the arrangements of them just to make it a little more compelling rather than a shoulder to shoulder line photo left to right. Um, playing with positioning and putting people around the space differently. Just try to get away from the straight left to right photo of people standing in a line. Sometimes I like to have everybody link elbows and walk towards the camera as a fun like group experiment. And then here's another example of where I went in and we did one-on-one portraits of everybody because they were already spread apart. I had my assistant holding a flash and we shot this in TTL, so we got these easy flashlight photos automatically. And then again, highlighting the vendor work, taking the time to go in and shoot the flowers of the bridesmaids, or I'll crop in and get a picture of the boutonnieres from the groomsmen. So work through these group posings, try to get something interesting, get some interesting compositions and posings. Now we get to the bridal portraits, bride and groom portraits. Stick to your meat and potatoes. Get your standard portraits. Get your vertical head to toe portrait. Get your environmental but more zoomed in look with an 85. Get your 35 real close, real intimate portrait. Shoot naturally lit. Try to get flattering natural light photos. And then if your style leans a little more dramatically, shoot those too. But I leave no stone unturned. Like I don't just stick to one darkly cinematic type portrait. If I did that, I think it would be a little jarring. I don't think that people see themselves the way I want to see them in pictures, and I'll sometimes be not surprised that they shared a photo that I wouldn't have chose. Like I had like this cool flashlight photo that I spent all this time on, but they might like the more naturally lit photos. So maybe I progressed to a flashlight photo, and maybe they don't like it, but I took a chance at it, and at least I got them these pictures first before I went here. naturally photos. A part of my routine is I like stacking the people, the couples in the photos. I like to put the groom in the foreground, the bride in the background, but focus on the bride's face as the focal point. Like I like playing with that stuff. I do it a lot when I do weddings. I like to, sometimes I alternate that, or maybe the groom is in focus and the bride is out of focus in that shot. I love doing a center compose upward kind of hero shot where they're in the middle of the frame, looking over my head, so it looks more like, I don't know, like it's a hero shot. It looks like they're superheroes, or they're from the Lord of the Rings in this wedding. I like shooting more environmental and showing if I'm in a wide open space with interesting backdrops in the background. Like I want to show that space. So I think I shot this with a telephoto, maybe 85 to 150 for a little bit of compression to bring those mountains closer and the moon closer. But I like to shoot those kind of looks if there's lots of space to work with. And I did shoot this with the flash off camera right. And I actually gelled the flash with the quarter CTO gel to make it look like it matched the sunlight, the color temperature of the sunset on the mountain. So I matched my flash color to match. I gelled my flash color to match the warmth of the mountains in the background. And sometimes couples will convince me to wait until 3 in the morning with them and catch the Milky Way on a nighttime photo shoot. So if you feel like going the extra mile, you can make those things happen too. But you get good looks of the Milky Way here with couples. And I love doing this kind of nighttime portraiture stuff with them. It's a favorite of mine to shoot this kind of stuff. Then we get to the wedding reception. And so 5 minutes. Here, I've got a couple of lights set up. I've got one light pointed at the father of the bride and one light pointed at the couple, and they're cross lighting each other. And they're actually, the one light is that's lighting the father is also lighting the backs of the couple, and the light that is lighting the couple is lighting the back of the father. So with strategic light positioning, your lights can serve more than one purpose and get different looks more dynamic looks onto your couple. You'll notice that they've got a kicker light on the side of their head. So we've got this nice, like this rounded 3-dimensional light look. And the father of the groom also has the same look going on as well. 2 lights can achieve this off camera. I don't think on camera light would be as successful here, but that's why you need to grow into that skill set and start playing with off camera flash as well. 2 flashes here. Actually, I think I have 3 flashes set up on this. So I've got a triangle of light going on, and basically you create an environment of light for your subjects to function within, and you wait for the moment that occurs. So I set up all the pieces for them, and then all they have to do is have their candid moments within the environment of light that I've created. And with off-camera flash photography, I can achieve this. So I can explore the space, work around the other guests, work around the decoration, and look for compelling arrangements, compositions to photograph the bride and groom while they get their first dance going. Same kind of light setup. I think I've got 3 lights set up here. I like to use glassware and candlesticks and stuff as foreground elements, just to kind of play with this ethereal look going on. So I like shooting through things at wide aperture just to get some interesting elements going in the photos. Back to the one flash on camera flash look. This is one flash, no off camera flashes, dragging the shutter, fun reception dance time photos. Like at the very least, you got to have a flash in your bag. So don't think you can shoot this part of the wedding without a flash. So you got to get a flash. 3 flashlight setup, creating an environment of light around my subjects. There was no available light here except for the light coming from the tree and a floodlight like 30 feet behind me that had no impact on the scene whatsoever. So literally an unlit scene. At the bare minimum, I could have pulled off some decent photography with an on-camera flash, but I chose to set up 3 flashes just to get a more 3-dimensional look, a more sculpted look of my subjects. It's what I'm known for when I shoot reception work, and it's how I like to shoot these scenes. But back to one camera flash is another dragging the shutter. At the very least, you can have some fun with it and get some decent stuff on a wedding reception. So get that flash. And then I like to end the night with a creative portrait. There was a fire going on outside the barn at this wedding. They had the cactus was already lit up. I didn't light the cactus or the lamp or the fire, of course. I set up 2 lights here. A far left light behind the couple, left of the cactus, and it's kind of referencing the light coming from the cactus, so it looks like the light looks intuitive to the scene. It doesn't look like I I put another light source there. So I want to I like to reference the light in the shot, in the light that's I like to reference the light that's already happening in the scene. So I have a light back there. That's the accent light, and then you get a little bit of strip of shadow on the left side of their bodies, and then right camera right is a speed light in a softbox Magbox 24-inch lighting the couple. And so I like to do these layered compositions, creative portraits, and you can only achieve this if you're doing off-camera flash and your work. You know, a lot of times you're going to get to this point in the evening, and you may not even have any tricks in your bag to be able to do this kind of photography. So that's how I end the day, end the night of the wedding, and now we're done. So, a couple minutes here. Your routine, and this is all I want to do is get you to this point, and then we're done. You're done with me. Post-wedding routine: transfer the images to your hard drive as soon as possible, and then immediately back them up. Get another hard drive as soon as freaking possible. So these photos need to exist on 2 hard drives after a wedding. It's due diligence. It's the bare minimum. You owe this to your couples, and then after that, you can get some sleep and get to these photos the next day. But at the bare minimum, get them on the 2 drives. And here's my process. Here's like a bare bones redundancy process I can give you. Get your photos onto this big 8 terabyte external hard drive. It's on Adorama. Make a photo for the couple, make a folder for the couple, drop the photos into it. As soon as that's done, then copy it onto your Samsung T7 rugged SSD 2 terabyte drive. And then I perform all the work. I do my culling, I do my edits and everything in Lightroom. I do it all on that hard drive, and you can copy all of you can copy the Lightroom catalog, you can copy your edits and everything to the backup files on the 8 terabyte external, so you can have it exist in both drives. At the very least, you want to make sure the files exist in 2 places, regardless of the work you do. But if you need to back up your work, you can accomplish that on your SSD. Have some form of redundancy. This is like the bare minimum entry level amount of redundancy you can have in your work. If you really want to get involved, you can always go with a NAS enclosure, NAS storage. You can do RAID arrays. Like it's way more involved. I don't want to blow everyone's mind with backup options, but at the bare minimum, here's where I would start. If you're going to be shooting professionally, you owe it to your clients to have the work exist in more than one place after the wedding is over. So if you're not doing this, you shouldn't call yourself a professional photographer, wedding photographer, because this is what a professional workflow looks like at the bare minimum. So. And that's it. We're done. Thank you for spending your time with me. I know there's so much more stuff to cover. If you have any questions, now's your chance to ask a few. But I appreciate you spending this hour and 45 minutes with me. My name is Justin Haugen. You can find me on Instagram at PhotoWarlock. You can also find me at www.justinhaugen.com, but my website hasn't been updated since the pandemic started, and it's due for an overhaul because all I have is wedding pictures on there, and now I shoot more corporate and industrial work. But thanks for joining me today, and we can hang tight for another 30 seconds in case any questions come in last minute. James wants to know, do I use any online backup service prior to gallery delivery? Okay, so let me talk a little bit more about my workflow. When I come home with my photos, they go onto a large, I have a NAS setup that I built. It's got drives and a RAID array of drives. So when I have 5 hard drives that I run like 14 terabytes each. If up to 2 drives on my setup die, I can still recreate my entire array of drives. So I've got backup there. So everything goes into that first. In this equation here, you would use your 8 terabyte drive that I've shown you here. So you put your drives on that, your photos on that first. Then my actual workflow is I cull off the big drive. I cull from my NAS and I make my selections. Then I import those into Lightroom onto the 2 terabyte drive. But what I do is I copy as DNG, so they're smaller files, and I'm only importing what I have culled and selected from the bigger hard drive. So what I'll have at the end of all this is a smaller set of DNG files on the 2 terabyte drive in my Lightroom catalog. Meanwhile, all the original raw files continue to exist on the external hard drive. Man, workflow is it's really involved. There's more to this, but on top of all that, I have Backblaze running constantly for my SSD drive. So the next morning after a wedding, everything on after I've made my culling selections on this drive, everything is backed up to Backblaze. So I am getting everything set up on Backblaze the next day. So when I'm done with the wedding, I have like multiple points of redundancy. I've got them on my NAS drive. I've got them on my SSD drive. I've got them on 2 sets of SD cards, and I've got an online backup on Backblaze. So let's say anything ever happened locally let's say something happened in my house, knock on wood. I would still have the online backup, and I could access everything that was all my existing work that's on my SSD drive. So I have that many points of redundancy. So that's a good place to go to start if you're going to look for backups. Backblaze, I think, is the one. I forgot the other one, the other backup one. And then when I'm done editing and delivering my photos, I've got a full set of JPEG files. All of those go to a final resting place on Zenfolio. That's my delivery service for people to buy prints, or if I allow them access, they can download files from there too. But that's my final resting place for finished JPEGs from a wedding is Zenfolio. You could use like Pixieset or one of the other services to have your galleries and online files on. But that's my last point of redundancy. So if anything happens to any of the drives in my home, at the very least, the work will continue to live on for my clients moving forward. So they'll be able to access their files on Zenfolio. So I've had that happen where maybe I phased out an old hard drive. I can still access the work for my couples at the end of the day. Question from Jada. Thank you so much for all this knowledge. Will you be hosting more in the future? That's up to Adorama and Tamron. I have to think about it, but maybe. If they think this went well, I hope so. Yeah, and sorry, I know I'm a little hurriedly talking. We've been on for a long time, and these like the workflow questions, I could spend a lot of time getting into the intricacies of like a redundant workflow and efficient workflow that helps get your work out faster and protects you from data loss. So maybe that'll be a topic in the future. That's all the questions. And thank you guys again. I'm Justin Haugen. You can find me at Photo Warlock on Instagram. Thanks, guys. Take care.